Oh my gosh. Instagram Live is a thing that is happening right now. I'm really happy to be here and to be sharing live on this very special day. It's the 7-year anniversary of my. Thank you for joining. It's the 7-year anniversary of my hospitalization. And so it's a quarter turn of Saturn. It's another opportunity to transmute what's happened into an offering, a sacred offering. And so today on the live, I just wanted to share a little bit about my story and maybe do a little bit of reading. Hi, Kyle. To kind of let you know why this is so important to me, and to those that I want to and already do support. And so as a spiritual emergence coach, Kyle and I have offerings where we support other people who are coming into connection with deeper aspects of themselves, with different realities, psychic opening, kundalini awakening, near-death experience, and all of these things that happen that get us in touch with other ways of being and knowing. And sometimes for those of us who go and experience these processes, we come into contact with folks who don't necessarily understand or believe, and what happens is that sometimes we're pathologized, and that happened to me 7 years ago. So it's really important that I continue to share my own story as well as support other people in feeling safe to share their stories. And I think one of the most important stories that I share, and you'll probably hear me share it often moving forward with different interviews or different workshops that I do, is a story about when I was in the hospital. So many people were I was coming into contact with, were interacting with me as if I was an object, and checking off boxes, and how dehumanizing that was for me, and re-traumatizing ultimately. And there was one woman, the night nurse, who was so kind to me, and she, stroked my hair, and she treated me like not only a human being, but like someone worthy of love and care. And so I know there are good people in the medical system, and if I ever have any kind of critique, it's not because I don't believe that there are people who are doing the good work there. It's because that there are people that don't understand that the way that they've been trained in the pathology paradigm, which I'll talk about more in a second, is that they don't understand the impact of that on people who are really open and really energetically sensitive. That being treated like an object, or being treated in a way that devalidates our reality, how hard that can be for us. And so being a spiritual emergence coach means that we hold these things as not only that the person's own experience is valid and real, and we want to support them in coming into their gifts and being able to manage them, but that we actually honor and respect the ontological realities of the shamanic realms, that there are beings, there are entities, there are other factors that come into play when we're talking about these states, these extreme states. And sometimes I'll talk about extraordinary experiences, sometimes I'll talk about extreme states, or spiritual emergence or emergency. And so some of these terms really have a lot to do with having another language to describe the experiences other than saying somebody's psychotic. And so it's really important to recognize the implications of the pathology paradigm, that as a classification system, as a biologist, hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. As a biologist, I completely understand the need for organization and classification. And if that was what it was and that's where it ended, and it was a way to organize and better understand what was happening for folks, then I would completely be on board. But what is happening and what has happened, and if you look to Bob Whitaker and all of his work with Mad in America, you can understand the legacy of trauma collectively that's happened to those of us who have been hospitalized and are psychiatric survivors, that sometimes there's trauma that happens. For those of us who have been hospitalized, it's possible that we may understand a little bit about that. And to say, like I said before with my story of the night nurse, that there are people that are so, their hearts are so with us, and people that are experiencers, and that I'm not in any way judging the Western medical system. I'm only here as a messenger of what my own experience is, and ways to better educate practitioners to be able to hold space for these states. And for me, what that means is really radically honoring the experiencer as speaking their own truth, that their realities are valid, that they have something important that they're processing, metabolizing, bringing through at this time, that needs to be respected. And in doing that, it's a way to really have some correctives for some of the pathology paradigm. And so, like I was saying, with the pathology paradigm, if it was merely a classification system, that would be one thing. But what we're noticing is that it's actually a system that is laden with judgment and stigma. And while in some cases it actually, diagnosis is required for folks to receive care, on the other hand, there's people who, feel that having a diagnosis really supports them and helps with their identity and helps them have a language to describe their experience. For me, it was the opposite. Being told what my reality was, being laden with a diagnosis and medication against my will, actually launched me into a hell realm that I could not get out of, and was trapped in for a really long time. And so part of my healing and for what I offer folks is an opportunity to reclaim their voice, to reclaim their truth and the sovereignty of their energy and what they're bringing through. And what's interesting is that in my first book, actually, I was writing this because I had Becoming Sacred Space. I had to write it because the second book was pushing on my channel, and it needed to come through, and I was working on it, for the last 7 years since my hospitalization. But that there was actually like intimations of it, because it really is a sequel. It's just, this is what happened before, and this is what happened after my spiritual emergency. But even in this one, there were some things that I was trying to do by reclaiming my voice after being silenced in my experience. And so I'm just going to read something from the introduction of my first book that actually has to do with getting my voice back after feeling silenced and feeling devalidated in my experience, and what I call medical gaslighting. So this is a little bit about getting my voice back. For so long I lived in silence. I stopped telling my story. I was afraid that by speaking it I would give it power, that it would win, and I would lose myself. How do I tell my story without being in it, without giving it power and perpetuating the patterns of fear or resentment that created the stories in the first place? How do I connect to the rawness of being there in it, to connect to the hearts and souls of others, to help them realize they're not alone, without getting subsumed into the tumultuous waves? The answer lies within, and it is this: the story writes itself through me. The wisdom passes through me like a hollow channel, picking up the pen, sitting at the computer. It's been far too long that I wanted to allow the universe to speak through me upon the page. Sometimes she comes through in a dance or a song or a touch, and now I invoke her to use me as her own voice, a messenger of her message. Today I know that sharing my vulnerability amongst sacred witness, showing everyone the true face behind the mask, that only makes me more authentic, more empowered, and actually makes me whole. It heals me. So part of me writing the book and sharing my story is not only getting my voice back, but it's also a way to help people that maybe have gone through something similar, to be able to feel not alone in it, and to feel, thank you, to feel that they are supported, and that by working together and supporting one another, we can support each other to bring our gifts out in the world, and have another way of holding what's happening, another template, another framework to describe and to make sense out of what's happening. And for me and for those that are my collaborators and fellow experiencer practitioners, spiritual emergence is that framework. And thank you. Yeah, it's been vulnerable to come to this edge, to share my story, to not just share it in written form and then just release it to the universe, but then to know that I want to share it like more verbally and with video and interviews and things like that, because I really want I want to get the word out. And it's not necessarily just about getting my story out, but it's about sharing, the spiritual emergence framework, sharing different resources, different organizations, and to really honor my teachers. Emma Bragdon, Michael Cornwall, Brent Courtwright, and of course Stan Groff. That so many of these people, that they've paved the way for us. So to pay homage to them, and to carry their work forward, to continue to evolve it, because no matter when something comes through, it's our responsibility as the torchbearers, as the wayshowers, to continue to evolve the work. And an example of that I talk about in the book is the sort of the binary structure of spiritual emergence or psychosis. The term psychosis, if we look at the root of it, is suffering of the soul. And if, like I said, if that was the way that we held it, and that's the way that the word was used, then I would be in alignment with it. But the way that the word is used is actually to devalidate the experiencer, and to tell them that something is inherently wrong with who they are and what's happening with them, and that someone in a power position outside of them is going to tell them what's true for them, and then treat them in a certain kind of way with some sort of interventions. Sometimes it's medications, which once again I'm not against if it's consensual, palliative, and as a proponent of cognitive liberty, the freedom to and the freedom from, right? So the freedom from is actually the freedom to be in our experiences without intervention. And what that would require is actually more of us able to hold the space, more spaces for people to be in process. And right now, one of the things that I think so many of us in this realm are really recognizing is that there are limited spaces for people to, sanctuaries for people to be in their process, in their spiritual emergence and emergency processes, without being hospitalized. So in terms of alternatives to hospitalization, unfortunately, there are not as many as we need, and they're not necessarily accessible to folks. So that's one of the things that I share. It's there are many resources, and they're not not enough, but I do want people to know that there are resources. I'm also in a community called the Gnosis Retreat Center community, the Neolangians, and through the PsyD department at CIS. Michael Guy Thompson, Mike Cornwall, Nita Gage, Fritjof Capra, and myself, Will Hall, Dean Tyler, so many of us that are working, James Norwood, that are working to be able to create a sanctuary in the Bay Area, much along the lines of R.D. Laing's houses that were in England and London, to be able to have a space for people to be in process. So that's something else that I'm in these communities of folks that are trying in different ways to be supportive to people that are going through these extreme states experiences. And so right now I'm going to read a poem from my book, my new book, which is in transit right now to me. So soon it'll be available online as well. It's called Holding Sacred Space, Honoring the Subtle Ecologies of the Spiritual Emergence Process. And so the title of this poem is called Emergence, and I wrote it shortly after my hospitalization. The tides wash in, bringing with them the shadow, playing upon the tips of my soul. I'm afraid that I will destroy myself and the necessity of that alchemical process. What remains when I am no longer there? Is there some higher octave yet unseen? Trust carries me through the turbulent waters. Exhausted, I lay upon the shore, salty with sea, sweat, and potential. So that's one of my poems. And the book is a combination of clinical sort of work and research and really bringing together different, like I said, teachers and communities and trying to just create resources for folks. And it's also, me working through and telling my own story. And there's different iterations of my story because part of the work that I do and what I've done for myself and what I support others in doing is what I call the remything process, which is similar to narrative therapy in some ways, but it's about how to understand what's happened to us or what has occurred, right? Even in the languaging of what's happened, right? It has this sense of something outside that's happened to us. In terms of like, how do we co-create, right? How do we co-create these experiences as initiatory experiences that allow us to really fully step into our soul purpose? And for me, the soul purpose and my mission in this way is to transmute. Hi, sweetie. To transmute. I'm trying to like keep my train of thought and then read the comments. So thanks for bearing with me. It's complex to kind of be half channeling, half like in my own experience and sort of what I call these temporal echoes. Right, so I'm actually in an anniversary of something that was quite traumatic. So just trying to acknowledge that, trying to be on the precipice of like a major vulnerable sharing of my story, and also like trying to be of service at the same time. So these are some of my intentions. So the remything process is really about understanding what's happened in a new way and having different frameworks to be able to describe that. Whether that means looking at it from a shamanic perspective, looking at that from spiritual emergence, looking at it as a type of psychic opening into one's gifts and being able to learn how to manage that. So before my experience, I was working with a lot of people that would consider themselves psychics, intuits, highly sensitive people, empaths, and working a lot with self-care and healthy boundaries. And so that was already kind of like the foundation with my own psychic opening that was happening when I went into my full-blown spiritual emergency. And also was dealing with a lot of Kundalini awakening and a lot of physical symptoms, pain, a lot of clearing, a lot of just opening and overwhelm in the nervous system. So there was a lot that was happening that it was going beyond the bandwidth of what I could handle. And unfortunately, I came into contact with the mental health system, and they looked at what was happening to me, and they saw it in a different kind of way. And the way that I understand what happened to me has been part of what this 7-year process has been meeting other people who are in these communities, these spiritual emergence communities, Mad Pride, the Langians, trying to, come into contact with folks that understand these things in a different way. My energy healers, my teachers, my intuitive and psychic teachers. That really understanding it in a different way means that it's truly holistic. It's truly holistic to understand that some sort of process of awakening It may have certain symptoms that, according to the pathology paradigm, would be called mental illness or severe mental illness or diagnosed in some kind of way. But that ultimately, for those of us who this resonates with, it's actually an initiatory process into psychic gifts and to our path ultimately of being healers, which is why Kyle and I's, the title of our online offering is called Awakening Healers, because it's really about understanding these things in that way. And so my new book, I'm just going to read from the back of the book, which is sort of the synopsis. I have it up on my screen because I don't have the physical book yet, but it's on its way. It's in transit. I should be arriving. The box of books should be arriving soon, and so I just wanted to read the back for you, a little bit about what the book is about. Spiritual emergence is an ongoing process of deepening inquiry, opening to more aspects and gifts within ourselves, and releasing what has been completed. This may be soft and gentle, like waves drawing us back into the sea, but more often than not, it's a purge through the fire. There may be pain, devastation, raw emotion, overwhelm, and surrender evermore into trusting the process and the support of our guides and helpers. So it is as much a deepening of our faith in the orchestration of the universe as it is a letting go of the old stories and energies that no longer serve us in these new octaves of awakening. Across time, we are shedding the old contracts, vows, energies, and trauma from past lives, from our ancestral lines, and this incarnation's own DNA and body. The initiation is an activation of soul purpose, gifts, and capacities to be of service in the unique ways that only you can. Being a midwife of this type of soul birth, facilitating the unfolding of the psyche, is an honor and requires deep levels of attunement and sensitivity. We can orient through lenses of existential humanistic, transpersonal, and Jungian psychology to offer frameworks on clinical practice. But if we do not continue to evolve as practitioners, to feel into and integrate the wave that includes spiritual emergence, neurodiversity, cognitive liberty, and the new ethics, that these who are on the very crest of the upsurge, where co-creating and manifesting something entirely new is possible. Join me in this exploration of my lived experience and clinical practice, of this story and its deeper message, of calibrating our instruments to another octave of resonance and integrity in holding sacred space. So that's a little teaser. That's kind of why the book is important and what it's about and what it means to me. Thank you. I'm just reading the beautiful comments and just really feeling the support of the folks that have joined today on my IG Live and sharing my story. And there's one more story from being in the hospital that I'd like to share. And that is, so in my second hospitalization, I was on, really heavy doses of medication and just in this crystallized like fog and like hell realm. And by the way, nobody that was in the hospital was psychotic. I mean, I saw everything that was going on for everyone. Like I could see the infiltration, I could see the imbalances. Even with the fog of the meds and everything, there was so much that it wasn't pathological in a derogatory or any kind of sense of stigma. But what it was that there were things that were happening that cannot be attended to necessarily by the Western medical paradigm. And so just really honoring that for folks, that like I was in there with a bunch of people that were going through like shamanic, infiltration and going through like just expanded states and were being treated in a certain kind of way. So anyway, so I was in there and this guy came in and he was totally channeling like I was in 2012. just really loud, just bringing through this like powerful energy and like information, and basically about like the quantum mechanics of bringing like matter into spirit into matter, and things that like I was like, yes, he's speaking my language, and it felt like home to see him, And then to see, the doctors come and be like, he's psychotic, he's manic, like, get the Halidol, restrain him. And I think why it was so affecting was that was me, like, 4 months before that, is that I could see from the outside, and I had, like, so much compassion for him in that moment. I had so much compassion for myself in that moment, and at that point, like, I was so devastated. Like, I was cut off, from, like, my truth, and I was told what was true for me. And so I saw him in that state, and I was just like, I grabbed his hand, and I looked in his eyes, and I said, I see you. I see you. I see what you're bringing through. I can feel it, and it's so important. So thank you. Thank you for being the channel that you are. And I said, and if I could have dictated it, if I could have written down or recorded what he was saying, because it was so important, but I could hardly even process information. I could hardly even think, and I barely have any memories from that time, from that whole time, because of the effects of the medications. But, grabbing his hand and saying that to him, and I said, and if you sit down here with me and work on this worksheet, because if you don't, they're not gonna let us out. That, like, I'm here with you. We can work on the worksheet together. I'm here with you. I see you. And that was the moment that I knew I was gonna go back to school to be a therapist, because I knew there was another way to hold it. And so, a year later, I went back to CIS. I went to the Integral Counseling Psychology program, and every class that I was in, it's almost like doing a dissertation, in that you kind of have a sense of what you're going to be working on, And it was so recent that, yeah, there was still a lot of emotions and stuff that I had to process, and I'm still processing, right? Of course. But it's just, I think I'm just really open because it's the anniversary, of the hospitalization. So in that sense, it's, I'm just a little bit raw. But yeah, so that was the moment that I knew that I wanted to be a therapist, and the lens that I had, which was spiritual emergence, and really languaging things differently. It's like, even in every class, I would wave the spiritual emergence flag and be like, is there another way to language this that's not othering? Is there another way to hold this that can honor people's experience? So it was special to play that role, even though, I'm sure people are like, that's her spiel, but it was important, it was important to have that lived experience, and to be able to bring it into the program, even a program at CIS, which is as evolved as it is, and, Brent at the helm, even though he just retired, to have transpersonal class with him, Brent Courtwright, he's such a dear, and he was such a mentor to me, and still is, but while I was in the program and I was struggling sometimes, like, he may be taking, like, the psychopathology class, and stuff like that. It's like, I really had to, like, work to get languaging around how to critique these systems without anger, without resentment, how to share my story and the depth of the impact of that, in a way that is honoring that there's folks that are in these systems that they don't know that they're doing something harmful, and so, like, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but also, like, challenging people who who really are being, if we don't look at the economic and political aspects of the pathology paradigm and big pharma, then I don't think we're really taking the whole picture into consideration. And so I think we need to do that, and one of the first Lang symposia at Esalen, Bob Whitaker was there, and it was really powerful to be able to hear from him and hear about all his research, and and then the great folks at Windhorse really one of the powerful things that I learned from them was about the mandala of healing. So it's like having a team around you that that is like kind of holding, not just holding space, but also like metabolically supporting the overflow of energies. And that's why it's like having a holistic team of people around you while you're in a spiritual emergence or emergency process is really important. So having different modalities, having different like folks that are on your like self-care support team, basically. And I kind of rework a WRAP, like a wellness recovery action plan, to kind of integrate more spiritual emergence and self-care stuff. So so that it honors, what people's needs are. And one of those things is like, who do you want around you when you're going into crisis? Who understands and can hold it in a way that feels in alignment with what your needs are, and so not just the basics, which is like, okay, how do I take care of myself in different ways? Like, for example, physically, emotionally, mentally, right, spiritually. So in that sense, holistic, but also like, who do you have around you? Who's your mandala of healing? And so I just, giving shout outs not only to my teachers, but to my dear soul family, my spiritual emergence family, to like all the people that have been there for me, who saw me from the very beginning and said, "You're not crazy." And then in those moments that I couldn't see myself, that they saw me and they held that for me, and that's what I want to offer others, and that's what I do offer others already, even though I'm still getting, thank you, I'm still getting my hours, but in my other practice, I do that as well in my spiritual emergence coaching and with Kyle and in our Awakening Healers group. And over the years before that too, Marley and I were offering in-person spiritual emergence support groups at CIS as well. So many years of, supporting people and sharing their story and being there. And just sometimes it's not even like, oh, we need to do anything. It's just like witnessing. It's like the sacred witness, it's like just having somebody there that can honor the truth of your experience as a corrective. So, so that's been really supportive to be able to be working through this, when I had a container of working through that, like at CIS, and then, in my internship now at Holos, and, knowing that as I'm like birthing this book out, that like, it's there's going to be more sharing that's coming. I'm going to share myself more. Thank you. And that it's been hard to get to this place where I can feel safe again to do that. And I'm getting there. I'm there. I'm doing it right now. So I guess we're there. And the book is published. So it's happening. And so I'm really grateful. And I'm honored to have been able to share today. And I'm going to do some self-care tonight. I'm going to connect with my roommate and do a little bit of sound healing. I'm going to have some nourishing food. And I'm really going to honor this day, this anniversary, as that moment of initiation, the beginning of that initiation into this path and into this offering, this sacred offering. Not just my work, but the book itself as an offering. So thank you so much for being with me. Thank you, Te amo. For being with me on this IG Live.
and for hearing me and for witnessing me and sending me the love in the comments. And I just so appreciate all of you. And I appreciate all of us doing this work in whatever ways that we are. That I think this time, for me, this time is about collaboration. It's about mutual support. It's about coming together and like recognizing that all of these different communities that are working with alternatives to really come together and to really work together, to create like a whole new infrastructure. It's like a big vision. I know that. But I believe we can do it together. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to share together. It's a beautiful thing to create together. And it's a beautiful thing to offer ourselves and our experience and the transmutation of these processes into sacred offering. Hi. So thank you all for being here. And I really appreciate all of you. And I'm going to go rest and do some self-care. And yeah, exactly, the vision for what's possible. And maybe so. So it is. And thank you again. And have a really good night. And I'll see you soon in one way or another.